evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Wall of Power TV. I'm your host, Paul Metza. We have a most incredible show tonight that I'm very honored to be a part of. Part of the story started 44 years ago, got picked up in 2001, which is the reason why these gentlemen are here tonight to talk about their participation in one of Bob Dylan's greatest records called Blood on the Tracks. Billy Berg talking to us from his home in North Carolina. What was that like walking through the door, meeting Bob, and getting a feel for what you really had no idea what you were going to be a part of, which is now, of course, legendary?
Walking into the studio, of course, the story was my Volvo station wagon was loaded with drums and record albums and a few pair of socks and some underwear, all ready to go to Los Angeles to live and to play and to do a career out there. So I get the call, and of course I'm going to delay the trip, especially because Billy's on it. I had the suspicion he was called too, and I walk in the studio one, and there's Bob just standing in the doorway with kind of I remember a leather jacket I think he had on, and talk about surreal, you know, here he is standing in front of him, and I thought for a minute we may be just doing a little demo thing. He may want to listen to something, a tune that we interpreted in a different way, but it was the real deal, so it was surreal to say the least.
You made it the real deal. It was only going to be one song. It was an all-acoustic album when it started. And because of the way that you and Peterson and Inhofer played and Weber, it became 5 songs. I'm sure you know that.
I do know that, and I was just refreshed by reading the book and all the things in the new book accompanying the 6 CD set. And it all, you know, it refreshed my mind about how it went, and it's just great. I'm just so happy.
It shot the hell out of my phone call because I was pitching my friends. And first I pitched Greg Inhofer, and then I just went right ahead and I said, I got a great drummer and a terrific bass player for you. The bass player is named Doug Nelson, and he's fretless. And then my best friend, my drummer, Stan Kipper, can play this thing. And he interrupted me. He said, stop, right there. I got the rhythm section. I got this covered. I got Berg and Peterson, and so I backed off at that point.
Well, you know, what happened with that, and you and I knew about you, you know, in those days, but we ran in total different circles with Stan, you and Stan with the KO band, but of course I knew about you guys, but Bill and I worked with David Zimmerman doing demos. You remember Bill? He would call us up in the middle of something, he'd get some project, and of course we were the house band, the studio band, or you know, between me and Jimmy Johnson, who's James Taylor's musical director, played bass a lot in those days too. But we'd just come in on a whim, you know, and he would have a David Zimmerman would have a demo for us. So, you know, it was like my story, you know, and I don't want to delete Bill's story, but we can talk about that a little later. But we'd get called all the time from him just on spur of the moment things. We'd pick the phone, hey, can you be in the studio tomorrow? I got some, you know, we're young, we got families, we're trying to make some money, right? And so David was real good to us in those days. Remember that, Bill?
I do remember that. I don't remember all the work we did with him, Billy, but and maybe he had a different drummer too at times, but I do remember a few of the things we did.
Yeah.
You worked with different artists too, Cat Stevens. Tell us about working with Leo Kottke as a preparation for working with Bob Dylan. Leo Kottke was all over the map from one take to the next, was he not?
Some of the greatest stuff I've put on disc or cassette or 8-track or whatever was with Leo and Billy in the studio. We just had so much fun with Leo, but the main question we'd always ask Leo when Billy and I would walk in, we'd say, Leo, you know, do you really need us on this thing, man? He's got his voice, he's got all these patterns and stuff he plays, and does he really need a rhythm section? But boy, we jumped on it. I love those sessions with you, Billy.
I would love, Billy, Paul Metza here, I would love to hear some of that unreleased stuff. We drove down from the Iron Range in December of '72 two-night show with Leo Kottke at the old Guthrie Theater. And the first set was acoustic, and for the second set, he brought Billy Peterson and Billy Berg out. I said earlier it was the night I decided when I walked out of there to become a professional musician. But the other thing, and I think John Bream, great music critic from the Star Tribune who is with us today, and the two Bills will remember how loud Leo Kottke used to play.
Yeah.
It was the first time you heard an acoustic guitar that loud.
Well, he's a tech freak, and he had all the great sounds back in those early days, you know. And so, you know, when Bill Berg sits behind a set of drums, there's a lot of firepower there.
Yeah.
You know, so it was just, you know, and our job, and as always as sidemen, we're all side guys really, is to make the art, showcase the artist. So in a lot of cases, it's like what not to play. In Leo's case, how do you know, he's playing so much stuff. How do you stay out of his way? It's like a freight train coming at you, man, you know?
Well, I think...
You know,
go ahead, John Bream, yeah.
Secret reasons why Leo plays so loud is Leo's deaf in one ear.
Yep.
Well, he is by now, probably. I don't know if he was at the
Well,
time.
no, prior to becoming a famous guitar player, he was in the Navy. And all those guns that they fired off in the Navy blew the hearing in one of his ears.
Really?
So his ears are hypersensitive
Well,
because
he
of
used
that.
to...
And he plays loud, I think, partly because of his hearing issues and partly because he just loves that sound.
Billy, when you got to Sound 80, that night, as the gentlemen here have told me before, was colder than hell. Do you remember how cold it was?
The parking lot was all ice, I think it was, and it was bitter cold to kind of warm up and sort of loosen up. And here's Bob, and you want to be at your very best, of course. So it was crazy. It was a crazy night.
Well, you guys are both from Hibbing. Did you talk about the hometown at all?
Not one bit. Bob does not ever small talk that I've ever heard. So it was only about the music and hardly much about that at all. And the story is, you know, Chris was learning the chord changes and would bring them out to us, and we, you know, and Bob would walk around and maybe do a little pattern on his guitar, and we'd hone in on that. So it was like it was a fabulous group effort to get us started that night.
Bill Berg, do you remember the first song you played?
Kevin, you know for sure.
It's Idiot Wind. Idiot Wind in the key of C minor.
Okay. So Bill Berg, Bob calls out the tempo. Are you just feeling it at that point?
I think we locked in on a tempo pretty early because, you know, in those days Bob was dense with his lyrics, so we had to, and so passionate. I always like to kind of drop the tempo back a little bit if possible, because you don't want to force the singer to be just rattling the lyrics off and not able to express, you know, these emotions that he's got.
Right.
I think with Billy on bass, Billy and I, you know, had done all this stuff together, so we really could play time together. And Greg and the rest of the guys, everybody just sort of felt it, you know, at that tempo.
Did I'm assuming Dylan had a pretty good sense of time as well.
He did, and I'll say this: when you first put your headphones on, and here's Bob's voice coming through your headphones, that was something right there. So I had to for a minute, pinch myself and say, okay, get back on the drums now.
Right.
You got to play. You got to listen to what Billy's doing. You got to listen to what Greg's doing. You got to listen to what Bob's doing. Because we had a lot of players, and you can't, you know, fill up every single 8th note, 16th note. You got to leave a little air. So I was thinking of that all along.
Bill Berg, these tunes were pretty much coming at you fast and furiously in a way. Probably some of them, you know, I imagine the way Dylan works, some of these lyrics were being tweaked right up until the time of the recording. So you're locking in with great bass player Billy Peterson and with Greg Inhofer. Is there every now and then, once you get the groove of these 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 minute, 9 minute tunes, where you can actually hear a little flash of these lyrics and go, There
I
is
did a
something
search
deep
in
going
his
on
when-
here
when
that
he-
I haven't been a part of before.
When he says, I shot a man named Jed, is that the line? And that was an instant slam on the middle of the snare drum, and that was that was spontaneous. I didn't know the lyrics that well. We weren't looking at any lyric sheets or anything, so some of that was just in response, and I tried to listen as hard as I could to his lyrics and his direction and his dynamics and his phrasing, all those things that we good studio players do.
Before he's done saying the word shot, you're on that snare. And you stuck it. That's true.
Yeah.
Before he's done with the word, that's how fast you responded.
Wow. So, Billy Peterson, what was it like? You played with Bill Berg before you guys have locked in, from the Poodle Club to eventually the Longhorn, where I used to go see Natural Life. Did you feel like really comfortable here? You're with your boys.
Well, I always was comfortable with Bill. Whenever we play, it's just like, even if, we played the last time, I think was up in Hibbing, right, Bill? Last time we did the Dylan review in Hibbing.
Right.
I think that's the last time we actually played together. But anytime in those days, you got to understand what and Paul, I'm like preaching to the choir here. You guys get it, but your listening audience maybe doesn't. In those days, every bar had live music. Peter, you remember that, man? We'd play live in bars. So a lot of times I'd be up all night, or we would in those days, and then Bill and I'd be playing, and then you go to the studio and you record a bunch of commercials or whatever was thrown at us. So we played every kind of music. I'm literally every kind. From schottisches to polkas to to rock to straight ahead swinging stuff that hit Pillhofer big band charts. And so we were under the gun a lot in performance level situations, because they didn't we didn't have a lot of time. We had to be, in the game from Jump Street. So, like when we came in with Dylan, I think Leo, everybody talks to me, said, well, what do you think about playing with Leo? And Bill and I had done, what did we do? Did we do two records, Bill, with Leo before Dylan came in?
We did, Billy, and I
Dreams
got
and all
to brag
that stuff.
about Ice Water. It's one of my favorite records I've
Ice
ever.
Water.
Water's beautiful.
Yeah, Ice Water
Right.
Dreams and all that stuff.
So,
What a great record! But yes, we had played acoustic stuff with Leo, and so we knew that genre, and we knew, as Billy said, all the commercials we did. Some of them were country, some of them were bluegrassy, some of them were bluesy, rocky, whatever we had to pull out. We did. That was our job. So,
Bill was totally capable of doing any genre of music at the highest level. So Herb Pillhofer, who we worked for all the time at Sound 80, who owned Sound 80, we all played there, would hire us because we were like a chameleon. We could actually do this stuff, and I could play upright bass and electric bass, right? And we could read music, we could do everything. So we were a commodity, and that's why we were inundated in doing all these different type of projects. So, in a long, I'm making a long story out of this, but yes, in retrospect, I believe that the Dylan thing became, we were good for that because of Leo and all these different things. We knew what not to play. We knew how to showcase an artist. So all these things, as young men, we're 22, I'm 23, Billy, you're 26, right?
something like that, Billy.
And these things were all baptism by fire. And Dylan was at point A to point B, performance level. No punching, come on, we're going to do this straight through, right? So we were all of that same mindset, old school, the greatest generation school, the way they did it, the way Frank Sinatra did it, the way Jeannie did it, my mom,
Yeah.
performance level, You
guys
think
were
that
like-
you start the song and you finish it, you don't think about a punch, you have continuity.
Well, you were the Swampers and the Wrecking Crew,
Yeah.
Twin Cities version.
When our Blood and the Tracks band, reunion band, got together, it was my chance to listen to Bob's lyrics again and marvel over his phrasing and his subject matter and his twists and turns. And so to be included in this bunch of guys, my friends who are sitting in that room, and be mentioned again in another review of that great work, I'm totally honored.
You know, I got to say something. You Hibbing boys did okay. Bill Burke, thanks so much for talking with you. We hope to see you soon. We're so happy that you were able to join this conversation. And personally, I was so glad to hear that you're still gigging. Gives a young man like me hope. Thanks, Billy. Have a great day, brother.
See you, Bill.
See you, Bill.
Bye, Bill.
Bye, Bill.
I'll see you guys, and I love you all, and take good care and have a ball talking to each other. I
Love
miss
you
all.
too.
All right, bro.
All right. We're going to have a little bit more on Wall of Power TV with the live human beings who played on Bob Dylan's Blood on the Tracks, Minneapolis, 1974, after these messages. Welcome back to Wall of Power TV. I'm your host, Paul Metsa. Join us again for some great conversation with most of the guys that played live on Bob Dylan's Blood on the Tracks from the Minneapolis sessions. The keyboard player, Greg Inhofer. Greg, you played on what, 3 tunes? How many tunes you played on?
All of them.
All of them.
Ooh, you're the only one that played on all of them. Wow.
That's why we saved you for last.
Yeah, I guess.
So
Sorry, Paul.
tell us about you get to Sound 80. Who called you for it? Odegaard?
Kevin.
Okay.
Kevin. I was working with Kevin's band. I was working in a fusion band called This Oneness. We were alternating Sundays with Natural Life at the Longhorn.
Upstairs.
It's like they were coming into the fusion thing from the jazz side,
Right.
and we were coming into it from the rock side.
Right.
And we both kind of met in the middle. So Kevin called me. He said, "Yeah, can you do a session on Friday?" I said, "Yeah." I can't tell you who it is. Really? Yeah, just show up at Sound 80. So I showed up, and the rest is history.
What, were you taken aback, or did you go, yeah, here's Bob Dylan, I know how to play?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I wasn't stage struck.
Right.
Our band was out with Olivia Newton-John at the time for those years, and so we were meeting lots of people. We were meeting Don Rickles.
Right.
We opened for Don Rickles in Vegas.
Did you hang with Don at all?
No, who we hung with was Norm Crosby.
Oh, better yet.
Norm Crosby used to like to come to the musicians' room after the gig, and he'd do another show, and he'd work on new material
Yeah,
with us,
right,
and we'd go, "Oh, that's really funny," Anyway, I just showed up, and it was very interesting. It's like, you didn't tell me it was Bob Dylan. God.
It's the same. I never knew either. Yeah. He called when he did the same thing to you because you guys all knew. I walked through the door, half asleep, and I got my electric bass over my shoulder, my upright, I'm walking, and then I walk through the door. I look out in the room, and there's Bob Dylan sitting out there, hair all up here,
Right.
So it was all real hush hush as I remember it, And when he called, that's why he didn't tell you and me. I think you and I were the only ones that didn't know what we were getting into. Yeah.
It didn't faze you at all. Bob depended on you for a chord chart that he handed you on the back of a pink newspaper.
It was the margin of a newspaper.
Yeah.
He threw it on the organ and said, "Here's the chords, the next song." And that was the one that you
moved up
to A. So, and then I wrote
Tango.
the other changes, since I didn't know how to transpose
all in
from
G.
G to A.
Yeah.
Now, this goes
changes.
back to the beginning of the show when we were talking about when Bob Dylan played Kevin Odegaard, Tangled Up in Blue for the first time in the key of G. Asked Kevin Odegaard, what do you think? And you said...
It's passable. I said, it's passable, Bob. And
What do you mean?
yeah, exactly. I've never been able to act it out before with the guys who were there. So this is kind of great. So I threw this out here, not remembering exactly where I am or who I'm with, because I thought it was just kind of a nice song. I thought it was kind of filler, laying there a little bit. And there are differences in the keys. They have different personalities. The folk idiom is around a C or a G. Now, when you get up to A, you're getting into some rock and roll shuffle. You're getting into some edgy stuff. So I thought, edge, let's move it up to A. So I just suggested try moving up to A. And so the guitar players put capos on. Bob didn't. He just stayed in position. And everybody, there was a big, let's put it this way. Do you remember the very long, quiet spot while he was considering that? He crushed out an
Yeah,
imaginary cigarette on the floor. And I sweat right through my clothes.
You thought you were getting the axe right
I
there.
thought I was
right?
getting the axe, the
was gonna
first guy to
fall.
get the axe in Minneapolis. My
Did any
big,
of you guys, when those songs got done, any of the songs that you played on, did you ever sit there and go, damn, that was a hell of a tune, or a hell of a
that one
take?
for sure.
That one,
That one.
What'd you feel, Greg, when you got done playing that?
there was nothing more to say. I mean, that
We
was
went quiet,
that was
the
one
room
take.
went dead.
One take, and everybody was
Tangled Up
quiet.
and
It
It
was like,
one take.
is that
Yeah.
it?
And Paul Martin's two-track mix.
Yeah.
Safety Masters. Remember they used to make Safety
Sure.
Masters in those old days with yeah, I think it was 24-track, wasn't it, Kev?
Yeah.
Chime in if you'd like, about Paul Martinson, and he, as the engineer on this session.
Well, I can speak because I recorded with him a lot, maybe. Maybe you did too, Greg,
Some
but
stuff
we
with
all
him, yeah.
did. But Paul would be the engineer on early morning calls, okay? And we'd get up in the morning, you know, Berg and I would go in, have a bunch of coffee to try to, you know, whatever we'd done, probably the Longhorn the night before, and we'd have a, 9 o'clock call or something, right? And we'd get in there in the morning, and Paul, his nickname was Two, because when he always
Was
said his nickname was Two, like TWO.
Right.
Because when he had a way of announcing like track 1, track 2, he always go 2. And so yeah, so his nickname was Two to me and Berg, right? Hey, what's Two doing? He's out having a square, you know. So anyway, but Paul, in regards to Dylan, but he was a great engineer through many great projects I worked on, including Leo loved Paul Martinson, you know, like Dylan did. Okay, so anyway, with Dylan, all those tracks were Dylan. I got a great story to, you know, I mean, it's
ahead.
a little long, man. But
Let's do this. We're going to have a little bit more on Wall of Power TV with the live human beings who played on Bob Dylan's Blood on the Tracks, Minneapolis, 1974, after these messages.
The wall of power was born.